had you, kids.
You had me at hello.
I wish I knew how to quit you.
This seems so fun.
There's no place like home.
I'm gonna make him an offer down with you.
Have we seen our favorite film of the year so far? Perhaps. Regardless, this is our Dune. Cue the music. Hey everybody, welcome to Gone with the Wind, the show about award shows where we talk about, you guessed it, award shows. I'm your host, Manning Franks, and I am with, one regular panelist and one special guest. But before we get to our special guest and talk about the movie that, thankfully its box office has been better than expected. I just looked that up and I'm very excited. But we have a regular panelist in Dan, the man, Skip Allen.
Yeah, I know I see these movies early, and sometimes I see them in the theater, and sometimes I pay to go see them, and sometimes I don't pay to go see them. So I'm just glad the box office is good for this, because I've not paid to go see this 3 times.
I paid to see this in IMAX on Thursday night because I wanted to see this in IMAX because I feel like that was the best thing to see, the format to see it in, because it was incredibly immersive. But before we talk about what movie we're talking about Dune, obviously. Before we get into the discussion of that, as you can see by the title of the actual episode, so I hope you're clicking on this. If you're not, what are you doing? We have a special guest here today that I have reached out a while ago, and I'm glad and really, really happy that we were able to make this schedule work, because I know his schedule is all over the place. So I'm happy he was able to get up super early to be able to discuss this with us. In fact, we were recording earlier than our regular time because I wanted to be able to get his thoughts and opinions upon there, because he is an incredible voice when it comes to film dissection in the community. I've known him for years. Roman, welcome, sir.
Glad to be here. Yeah, I'm just pretty pumped to talk about Dune. I've been writing, obviously, a couple of my review and my essay on some other things. And I've just been like, man, I just want to vocalize this. I've vocalized it to Joanne, my fiance, and my brother, and some coworkers. And it's just not the same. I just want to do it in front of a microphone with a headset on for however long and just talk about why this movie just is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Oh, for sure. It is one of those movies that just has stuck with me. I've watched a little bit on it. Again, I've watched a little bit on HBO Max today just because I wanted to see it. It's not the same. It's definitely not the same.
Not the same.
But I still enjoy it immensely, and I want to see it in theaters again. And I have never seen a theater. Wow, that's let me rephrase that. I have never seen a movie twice in theaters this year yet. This might be the first time that I do that, because it's just such a visceral experience that I had.
Yeah, I'm definitely considering it. Movie ticket prices are definitely jumping up more and more out here. I used to go to the movies for like $10-11, and now I'm going for like $14-15. It's just like not breaking the bank or anything, but it's just, I want to see it in the Cine Capri because I couldn't go to see it in IMAX because all the IMAX showings and seats were sold out, thank goodness. But I saw it in the Cine Capri, which is pretty close. You just don't get the IMAX ratio, but you get the Dolby Atmos sound and a really big screen. And some pretty good presentation of the curtains drawing over and the lights and everything, and it's super cool. So It was a fun experience.
On a side note, do you have AMC theaters in Arizona?
I do. They're kind of out of the way though, and I loathe their popcorn tremendously, so I can't go.
Oh my god! Well, I don't eat popcorn, so I guess that does me great. Because
narrows it down.
Probably 3 or
Hold
4
on.
times a week.
Wait, Dan, you don't eat popcorn?
No, I don't eat popcorn because
how did I just know this?
Popcorn.
Blasphemy.
I don't want to fill up on popcorn. I want to fill up on steak, pork chops, chicken.
Well, you can do both. What? You can do both.
Whatever. Not peripheral food like candy and popcorn and junk like that. I want a
popcorn
nice
is part of the religious experience of going to.
Even if you don't eat it, you have to buy it.
Yeah,
I don't.
Help the movie theater out. Help the movie theater experience out, Dan. Buy their popcorn, since apparently the movie theaters get the majority of the ticket sales. So
yeah,
I found that out and my mind was blown.
33.3% of the ticket sales go to the theater, and 33% go to the production company.
There you go. So, well, the more you know. But no, I love getting me a bucket of popcorn before a movie. That's just what I do. You don't get too much butter though, because too much butter sometimes messes. I don't know.
With your tummy and. Puts you on the toilet pretty quick, yeah.
Oh yeah, there's something about movie theater butter. It's just not. It's something different. Something different with that butter. Anyway, this is not the Popcorn Gone with the Wind podcast of awards. I don't know.
We always get this. We always end up on some sign tangent, don't we, Manny?
We do, but you're the one who said you don't eat popcorn, so I needed to call that out just because I'm shocked. I just didn't know this after having eaten.
I rarely eat popcorn. I do eat popcorn. It's very rarely.
Okay. Well, regardless, this episode today, we are going to dissect and talk about all things Dune. But before we do that, Roman, tell me a little about yourself as someone in this film space.
Oh man, well, how far do you want me to go back? I can go back to the Winter Soldier and chronicle everything up until this point, and just every single Cliff Notes, what page I was in, what page people wanted to kick me out of and yelled at me for, and all this other stuff. No,
give me the Spark Notes, but also the detailed Spark Notes in between.
Well, just kind of started with Man of Steel and Prisoners, actually, just two movies that really just kind of connected with me in a weird way, because we always love watching movies growing up, but you don't really love them until you fall in love with one where you're like, man, I want to know more about how to watch movies. And those were two of them. And then I started just kind of pursuing writing about film with Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. That movie did a lot for me. So I was like, I had a lot more to say about this movie than I thought. And then I kind of detailed it. I started watching interviews and reading essays from other people. And then after that, it sort of just really kind of went above and beyond with 2016 with Arrival. That's a big one. My favorite movie of all time. I've watched it like 3 times this year already, and it's tremendous. And obviously I wrote about it a little bit in an essay I had dropped this weekend of Denis Villeneuve Borders, about what his films are about and how he continues to make his films about borders. And, Dune is kind of like that as well. And yeah, now it's just kind of like, do I want to be a filmmaker? Do I want to be a screenwriter? Do I want to just be a film critic? I don't know, but it's just kind of just an interesting career path that, when I tell people about it, at my job, I'm like, well, I like doing this job, but I want to do what's next. And that's write about film and talk about film forever, because I just think there's so much to just dive into, just in terms of not just what you can learn about your life, but hundreds of other people. I mean, and they say this about stories all the time, not just with movies, but with books, with any art in general, is that, you can walk one, path in your lifetime, but reading books and indulging in art is walking the paths of thousands of people. And that's what kind of film does for me. And I'm just, I just love it to pieces, obviously. Yeah, it just does a lot for me. I feel like I've heard that, but hearing you say that again is just so true, and just kind of speaks to the volume of what film can do, and what it speaks to what film can represent for so many people by bringing voice to the voiceless, or letting a voice be heard by a multitude of other people. And that is an excellent way to describe it. Very, but also personal, but also universal is what filmmaking is. It's personal, but it's also for all who can witness.
Yeah, that passion that I hear from Roman's voice, Manny, it just reminded me of myself when I was young. And, when I was watching Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, and watching some of my great favorite filmmakers growing up as a kid, Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, Sidney Lumet, these guys, and saying, I wanna watch their filmography. And then who are those actors in those movies? Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Jack Nicholson, Henry Fonda, and then that just spawned myself over the years becoming a film pundit and a film critic myself. So it's great to hear that kind of stuff from a young guy like Roman. It really is fantastic to hear stuff like that.
Well, we are here because we love movies and we love talking about movies. And first off, I did not know Arrival was your favorite film of all time. I know you loved Arrival, but wow.
Yeah, man. I remember seeing it in theaters, and just at the end, looked at my brother and my fiance, and I was like, that was really good, but I didn't expect it to be as deep as it was. And then the end, it kind of just hits you with something. And then I rewatched it. And now my reading on the film is just that it is the embodiment of movies. And I have that in my essay, that Denis Villeneuve essay. And, Manning, you mentioned that you're still reading a little bit of it. So I won't spoil that, essentially, because I think that it kind of like was an epiphany for me at one point, where what this movie is about is so much more than what you can kind of perceive it as. And I think that, everyone should kind of give that another look if they haven't recently.
It's funny you say that about Arrival. I'm a poster collector, if you haven't guessed.
There are posters for all those there are posters behind Dan every episode.
Thousands of them.
I went out of my way. I was looking everywhere. I was trying to go to theaters. I need as many of the Arrival posters as you can get. Needless to say, I got zero. I could not find any Arrival posters. I wanted like the one in Tokyo. I wanted the one in wherever. I was like, that'd be so cool just to have like a backdrop of like a bunch of the
Arrival
posters. Different
posters.
places, you know.
Why are they here? Yeah.
I never got any. I didn't even get the one from Montana. Dang it. But those are so cool, right? They did one for every city that those pods were in.
Yeah, that was dope.
Really?
Yeah,
they did.
And I'm like, damn,
Wow.
can you imagine if I had like the backdrop of my wall when I did videos, all the Arrival posters? It'd be kind of cool, right? Nah,
That would
I
actually be
got
really cool.
Zero.
I mean, I'm assuming they cost a pretty penny out there now somewhere on eBay.
Oh yeah, I bet.
But regardless, we all love movies, and we're here to talk about one movie in particular that I'm pretty sure from talking us all individually, we are all incredibly positive on. There is like, if we have complaints, they are minuscule because I'm pretty sure either of us are 4.5 stars or 5 stars out of 5 because that's how much we love the movie. Prefacing that right now, we'll come at it with a critical eye, but you're going to hear us gush about it a lot because we immensely enjoy it. But before we get into Dune specifically, I want us to talk about what have we seen this week, be it in movies, television. What have we been consuming recently when it comes to the theater experience or even the home experience? Dan, what have you seen?
Well,
besides Dune, of course, I always have to say that. Besides the movie we're talking about,
yeah, I did spend a lot of time seeing Dune this week. No,
you did,
and last week. You did too. I actually saw one of my most anticipated movies of the year from the previous year. We're going to say that a lot on this podcast this year because we're getting a lot of movies from the previous year that were supposed to be out.
Fair.
Now they're out this year. And one of those movies is called The French Dispatch, directed by Wes Anderson. And I'll tell you what, oh my God. You want to talk about the cast in Dune? How about the cast in The French Dispatch? This is an amazing cast. Timothy Chalamet is in this as well. Jeffrey Wright, Tilda Swinton, Frances McDormand, Bill Murray. I mean, Leah Seydoux, a very short Saoirse Ronan. I mean, it's a who's who of actors and actresses. Benicio del Toro. I mean, amazing cast in this. How he was able to get all these people because they all want to work with Wes Anderson. That's the reason why they get paid scale when they work with Wes Anderson because they all want to work for the great Wes Anderson. The other thing, you want to talk about set production? Oh my God, there's so much nuance and detail. You're just looking in the background. You're just looking around at stuff because you're like, how does this guy do it? I mean, there's so many little things that are nooks and crannies that are going on in the French Dispatch. It's basically 3 stories about 3 different writers that work for the French Dispatch and kind of their meanderings and going about and writings of different stories that their writings and stuff. And Bill Murray is like the editor of the magazine, and it's in France. Obviously, I know you guys are probably Wes Anderson fans, or I hope you are. You're going to see this movie, so I don't want to give anything away. But there's a couple people I think could get. Jeffrey Wright, Benicio del Toro I like. A lot of people are poo-pooing on Timothy Chalamet. I didn't think he was bad.
Oh, they are?
Timothy Chalamet, yeah. Some people are poo-pooing on him. I don't think his arc is that bad because he's got Frances McDormand in his story. But awards, you're going to see some costumes. You're going to see some back set production, that sort of stuff. Maybe a script, but I kind of doubt it. It's a little, it's kind of inside baseball if you're a Wes Anderson fan because he kind of does Wes Anderson's stuff. He like goes to the next level of Wes Anderson, you know.
That's what I've heard mostly from people. They're saying this is a very Wes Anderson film. It's very Wes Anderson, even more so than some other ones in the past. Like for me, you asked and said, I want to hear Roman's thoughts about this as well too. I'm guessing the two of us haven't seen it, correct? Right, Roman?
No, sir.
Okay, there we go. That was a very declarative no, sir. But I think he is an interesting filmmaker. By interesting, I mean he has a distinct vision, and I appreciate his distinct vision. It is very Wes Anderson, and in fact, I think that's almost a verb or an adjective. Excuse me. It's Wes Andersonisms, or and I love the Grand Budapest Hotel. I think it's very smart writing. That's one of my favorites from him. Or also Ray Fiennes really just steals that movie.
Love Moonrise Kingdom.
Moonrise, I like Moonrise fine, and I think Fantastic Mr. Fox is another great one. I genuinely love the stop motion vision that he created. I am not the biggest Wes Anderson fan of like I'm gonna go out and watch his stuff. I appreciate him. He's an auteur that I appreciate, but he's not one that really connects to me personally, because I feel like he kind of puts, this is not the Wes Anderson, I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I feel like he is, I don't know how to describe this, but he definitely feels very, it's almost like he is not trying too hard. Roman, you look like you're similar to this. Can you put into words what I'm trying to say?
Well, you pretty much hit on the three that I was going to mention. I love Grand Budapest. I love Fantastic Mr. Fox. Moonrise is okay, and then every time I start one of his other movies, I can't finish him or I don't like him at all. And he's just a very distinct filmmaker to the point where it's like, yeah, I can appreciate him because I think it's awesome that we have a guy that can just make shots so symmetrical and are beautiful. I mean, his movies look stunning and all that jazz. I don't mind them. But for the most part, it's just kind of like, yeah, he doesn't really do much for me. I love the big cast, but I'm also not a big Bill Murray guy. I get it. He's also a Cubs fan, and he's awesome. He's a great fan, but it's just, there's more to that. And yeah, he just doesn't really do much for me as a storyteller and as a filmmaker outside of the fact that, you know, if I could take almost any other director's storytelling and put him in his sets, I think you'd have the best director of all time.
Wow. That is a statement. See, I'm excited though. I'm excited to see it because I'm curious because it's a great cast, and especially because it's distinct into three separate stories. You said it's three, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm curious to see how that plays out. I'm curious if anything else to see it. That's my big thing.
And the French Dispatch building and offices is like a framing device of the of the stories. So it cuts back to that between stories and stuff.
Which I actually you mentioned, Roman, like you've never been able to finish. The one film that I've never been able to finish from him is The Life Aquatic. Just saying that out there. I've never finished it.
I watched that one, but that was not an easy one to finish. I didn't finish Royal Tenenbaums. Can't do it.
Oh, I love Royal Tenenbaums.
That's one I have not seen.
That's so funny.
Can't do it.
The banter between Gene Hackman and Danny Glover is, oh God, off the wall.
I might see it for Gene Hackman alone. We'll see, but I've not seen Royal Tenenbaums.
But yeah, Gene Hackman's great, but Ben Stiller's great. Gwyneth Paltrow's great in it. I mean, there's a lot of really good performances in Royal Tenenbaums. Another one I saw, another director that's made some really good movies in the past, about 4 of them, and this first foray into horror is called Antlers, produced by Guillermo del Toro, but directed by Scott Cooper, starring Kerry Russell and Jesse Plemons. Wow, what a new vision of horror this is. It's moody. It's set in Oregon. The cold and the dampness of Oregon really plays into the overall mood and the setting of this movie. And I'll tell you, there's a little kid in it. His name is Jeremy T. Thomas. I put this kid on the level of Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense and Jacob Tremblay in Room. You're going to remember this kid when you see this movie. This kid was scary and haunting in like a weird kind of way, because he's just kind of playing a kid that goes to school and goes home, but he's got this secret. And I'll tell you,
what could that be?
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed Antlers a lot. I'm hoping that people have a chance to see this and really embrace this like I did.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for that for the first time. I think I may have saw it before, but it feels like a trailer I saw like 8 years ago, and the movie like never came out, and now it's like here. But no, I went to see a movie with my brother, and then afterwards we were like, man, that looks really good. And with, Guillermo, producing and kind of having his hands in it, that's pretty exciting. And yeah, it definitely just looks like an interesting mood piece. Plus Jesse Plemons is in it, and he's in everything, and he's great in everything. And he should be in every movie ever made, especially for the Frito-Lay's joke from Game Night, man. It's just an iconic line now at this point. So yeah, Antlers, I'll probably check it out. I don't usually do horror in theaters just because I feel like I have a bad experience almost every time. But we'll see.
Which is funny, like Jesse Plemons, like I hate Jungle Cruise this past year. I loved watching Jesse Plemons just do his thing. Oh, he is a absolute hoot. There is something about him where he's just shooting the scenery. Jesse Plemons is a great actor, especially. Go ahead.
He's got a big role, Manning, in Killers of the Flower Moon.
I'm so excited for that.
Don't even get me started.
I won't get you started. I won't get started. I think that Scott Cooper is. I have not seen Out of the Furnace, but I think Hostiles is a criminally underrated film. I think it is a movie that was missed by a lot of people. It came out at a really poor time, but Rosamund Pike is great. Christian Bale he's usually always great. But it is just Wes Studi is also really good in it as well. It is a very dark but also intimate film that takes place over the American West. It's told in like this beautiful, these beautiful landscapes. It's large. It feels open but intimate at the same time. Like there's so much going on around, but you never really leave the small close band of people in their objective to get Wes Studi's character to safety. But it's really good. I highly recommend people who haven't seen Hostiles. I love it so much.
And I like Johnny Depp was great in as Whitey Bulger in Black Mass. I'll tell you what. But I'll tell you what, his dramatic chops really lend themselves perfectly for a horror movie. Scott Cooper. I can't wait for what he's got next down the pipe.
Oh, is it preface? Is it a very gory film? It looked quite that. I'm very bad with gore.
It's blood. There's blood in there. I'm not gonna say how gory it is or how not gory it is, but it's a horror movie.
Body horror.
It's a horror movie / sci-fi fantasy.
Okay. See, I can take Midsommar, something like that, and I love that. But when it comes to anything where you have body horror, I'm just kind of like,
yeah. This is a scene where a guy comes out of his own skin, and the husk of the skin is left there, and it's pretty.
Oh,
looking.
Well, I'm definitely going to probably see this like Roman later when I actually get a chance to rent it or something.
You'll see it at home when I can cover my eyes and not have to pay to do that.
Next week, when we do the show next week, hopefully by then you will have seen Frank's Dispatch and Antlers, and then you can discuss them on the show. And you say, Dan, you would chastising me or something.
I'll just close my eyes the entire time. Antlers, whenever there's any body horror. But anything else you saw, Dan?
I'm just gonna leave it at that. I've seen some other things, but I'm just kind of leave it at that.
Perfect. And Roman, have you, as our guest, what have you seen and watched this past week that really stuck out to you?
I kind of had to keep it a little brief on what I could watch this weekend, just because I was preparing for Dune. So I watched Sicario and Arrival and Prisoners. But just as something a little different, I've been working on getting through the Universal Classic monster movies through the Criterion Channel, and I'm about halfway through now. I just finished watching The Black Cat, which is like one of the first like occult horror movies with like really interesting set design, and it's got Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff, and they're fantastic in it, especially as a duo, their first time on screen together. I mean, the movies aren't like brilliant or anything outside of The Invisible Man, which just might be one of my favorite horror movies of all time. The way that the special effects still hold up and how kind of a dark comedy it is, and just the black and white contrast, everything. I've had a lot of fun going through those just to kind of see how, and there we go, how horror has evolved over the years and how they used to be so silent and so specific and kind of let its space and its set sort of be horrific instead of just loud noises like we have now and scary faces. So not much, but on the TV side of things, I'm working my way through for the first time through Neon Genesis Evangelion, which has surprised the absolute hell out of me. And I knew you're going to be a big fan of that. I did not expect to love this show. I'm about 12 episodes in. I haven't been able to chip away at it because, again, I've been working on some essays and working on some of my writing this week. And that turned out great. So I'm going to get back to it this week and probably finish that show and watch the movies, because I'm not a big anime guy. I've said that before, but this show is doing wonders for me. It's just checking every box, and apparently it gets even more crazy by the end. So I'm pretty excited to see where that goes.
Man, I knew you loved that. That was your jam. That video, I watched that video that you did.
Thank you. That was Neon Genesis Evangelion. To me, is a beautiful. Again, I agree. I like anime. I will watch it if I know that. I don't like the tropes that come with usually traditional anime, but when it comes to particular Neon Genesis Evangelion, I won't spoil anything, but it is just truly a beautiful dissection upon trauma, upon a dissection of what it means to go through these specific relationships in life, but while having this backdrop of just pure chaotic, apocalyptic into the world, larger than life robots, mechs fighting each other with these angel beings. But it's an intimate story at its heart about a child and those around him, and using, having a coming of age story with these children. And it is a Hideaki Anno is just, I can't describe it and praise it enough with what he was able to do with Neon Genesis.
Yeah, I saw his Shin Godzilla movie in prep for Godzilla vs. Kong earlier this year, and everyone was like, well, if you love that, you'll probably love the show because it's a lot of the same stuff. And I'm seeing that. It's all about like this bureaucratic, just nonsense. Like, and it's insane how much Guillermo del Toro was inspired by this show, considering Pacific Rim is a lot in common with it in some regard. Not every aspect, but some. And I'm definitely, I wouldn't consider myself a fan yet, but I'm definitely like watching it every week right now and just being like, wow, this is awesome. This is genuinely very good. And
I will also preface this by saying, you said you're going to watch the movies, but make sure you watch End of Evangelion at the very end. I think it's a better capstone than the last. I think it's the 2 episodes, 1 episode.
I think 25 and 26, I think, is what everyone's been telling me.
Yes.
A couple people have been messaging about it. So yeah, that's what I hear.
Please watch End of Evangelion before you have a wrap up, because I personally, much as I love it, the last 2, I understand what they might have been going for. Don't care for them. So all I tell you is definitely watch End of Evangelion to get a nice wrap up of everything. But yeah, in the meantime, what I myself, first off, Roman, anything else you have seen?
No, that's pretty much it. Just some Denis Villeneuve, some horror, and some Neon Genesis. So it's pretty much it right now.
What a eclectic collection of films. I love it.
Yes, very different. All very different.
Oh, fantastic. So for me, most of what I was watching consisted of Dune. I watched Dune, and I'll watch it 1.5 times because I watched it on HBO Max, which I preface by saying it doesn't hit as well as movie theaters, but not saying it still hits wonderfully just from a standalone film, but there is something that is missing as much theatrical experience. We'll talk about that later. I finished, and I devoted my time this week to finishing, because it was a busy week for me. I did it, and I finished Squid Game. Finally, I finished Squid Game. And I think while it is an uneven series, I think it is really creative. And I appreciate directors and writers and just creative artists who are, creative. They actually have some creativity and some ingeniousness that is put inside their stories. It's a contained story, but it has a larger question mark when it comes to, again, I won't try to spoil too much, but when it comes to the idea of examining capitalism, which we love, good dissection of capitalism, especially from never gets old. And it's from a South Korean lens, obviously, but it has a universal feel when it comes to questioning, when it comes to power dynamics, and also when it comes to when people are at their lowest and they're willing to do whatever they need to, what are they capable of? Yeah. And it does that through a way that is very succinct. Each episode is almost, it's not every time, but it consists of this is this task, this is this task, but each game consists of an episode, give or take. And by the end of the series, you see the larger scale of what they were trying to accomplish. This is what the Squid Game really was. You kind of get the idea of what they're going for, but it confirms it near the end. I will say and preface though, they really leave you hanging for season 2, and I don't appreciate that. Give me some sort of finality while teasing some things out instead of being like, "Yep, here's season 2. We're
Tune in
coming
next
at
week.
you."
Sounds like Dune.
Exactly. We'll get into that in a sec, actually. So
Yeah,
my one possible critique of the film. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm 2 episodes into Squid Game. Haven't been able to chip away at it much just because I've been watching Neon Genesis and some movies and some writing, and I might work a little bit on that tonight. I've been watching it with Joanne as much as we can, and yeah, I've definitely noticed like it's got all of those undertones in there, plus with social media kind of exclaiming that. And yeah, the second episode in particular actually kind of stood out to me where the show is built around being marketed as this like show, like a game show, but it like kills people, blah blah blah. But what I loved about the second episode is it has nothing to do with actually physically being a part of the game. I'm trying to keep it as limited as spoilers as possible, but what they go back to in their home life is essentially the same thing as what they're going to be enduring in the game. So they kind of realize like, would I rather be doing this and not potentially winning any money, or going to risk it all to win it all? And I think that's really fascinating and really interesting way to convey that, because the game, what I notice is like really bright poppy colors of pinks and greens and yellows, and then back at home it's just all kind of dark, moody, rainy factories and mechanical garbage. And yeah, it's pretty interesting how they've kind of built it up, and the fact that it's Netflix's most popular show like ever, it seems like, or sounds like, and plus for a Korean film and cinema and shows, that's really important to me, especially because with Parasite launching a couple of years ago and just absolutely taking the world by storm, I think we're kind of seeing a changing of the tide here and what people are willing to watch, and I think Squid Game is a really good indicator of that.
That 2-inch tall barrier, as Bong Joon-ho says.
It's getting ready to be toppled.
Agreed. But no, I also just want to comment, again, you had mentioned specifically the bright colors that are used to illustrate these childlike games, and it's a beautiful contrast between what they're actually doing.
Yeah.
It's disturbing, but in a way that's kind of like you can't take your eyes away from, because it's just so aesthetically interesting to watch. And again, when you get into more, that dynamic continues as you go into each particular game, and it's just really fascinating. But yeah, though that's what I've been kind of honing in on. But I was hoping it'd be the first 30 minutes, and I'm glad we were able to get all that stuff in, because now the rest of the hour we're going to be talking about is Dune. Frank Herbert's Dune. Not Frank's, like my name says. But, ladies and gentlemen, this is a movie we have been waiting for quite some time. I don't remember if this has not been delayed as much as I believe as like No Time to Die has, which is one of the first to be moved. But I know this was 10 months. Okay,
10 months,
specifically.
Yeah.
I don't know the precise amount of time, because No Time to Die was over a year and a half. So this is
almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years. But that's taken into effect, again, as we talked about 2 weeks ago, Danny Boyle switching with Cary Fukunaga. But this one, Denis Villeneuve's Dune, is a film we've been waiting for quite some time, based upon the film, the book of the same name back in the 60s that came out. I have had no prior experience to Dune. I have never seen the original David Lynch Dune. I have never read the book. All I know really is there are sandworms, spice, and that fear is the mind killer. That's all that I know. That's literally all I knew about it going into this, outside of the fantastic trailers that we've seen. And finally, after waiting for so long, we have been given Dune. The hype is real, ladies and gentlemen. I saw it in theaters in IMAX. And in this movie, Timothée Chalamet as Paul Atreides takes us on this journey into the planet Arrakis. And Arrakis is this barren wasteland that the Furmen live, which are the natives of this planet. But there are some spice in the air that helps with interstellar travel. You can't get anywhere and connect space without this spice. And there is some great exploration as we have these intimate stories that transpire with Paul and his relationship with his mother, his father, his name, his destiny, but also at the same time, the political turmoil that is going on behind the scenes in the backdrop of everything. Is this in fact a part one? Yes, they did really good in hiding the fact this was a part one, because they don't tell you until right you get sit your butt down in that theater and you see part one underneath Dune. And I'm like, smart, very smart. But ultimately, we get a complete story when it comes to his character, or a nearly complete story, if anything, of Paul Atreides and where his vision or his visions will be going, and ultimately his journey will be going. But Dune to me is a film that I know we've been waiting for some time. And before we get into our my direct thoughts, I would love to hear Roman, as our guest, would you like to start on your thoughts on what Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Dune did for you, and was it worth the wait?
So when I woke up on Thursday morning, I was just absolutely ecstatic, just because I haven't been this excited for a movie and since Last Jedi, Batman v Superman, like to the point where I was like, that's all I could think about. I just want to be sitting in the theater, because, you know, I've anticipated movies, but not to the point where it felt like I was getting ready to go see an event, something that I just really couldn't wait to see, like come to the screen and feel like I was there with a bunch of people. And what was so interesting is all these months leading up to Dune, we're like, are people going to see it? Are people going to see it? And then people released like, screenshots of their IMAX screenings being completely full or sold out, just like mine were, and having to go resort to Cine Capri. I mean, that sounds bad, but, you know, obviously it's a great privilege to see it in the Cine Capri. But yeah, Dune did everything and then some for me. It went above and beyond in terms of expectations. I knew it would be pretty good just because I loved the filmmaker and I loved everything I saw about it, but just the way he talked about the film. I got to see the preview a couple months ago before the movie came out, and how Hans Zimmer talked about how he did the score and how we're so used to hearing trumpets in sci-fi fantasy films. And this time he wanted to do something different with the choir, with the mechanically engineered sounds of like spaceships and sets, and how that kind of contributes to the overall themes and messaging and mood of the movie. And I could go on a tangent forever, and I have most of this just littered in my review, but it's just one of those movies that checked every single box in terms of expectations, and how it brought to life a book that is so incredibly dense, trimmed all the fat and streamlined all the important stuff about essentially a boy growing into a man that blossoms into a leader. And I think that they nailed the first 3 acts of a 6-act story. And I genuinely need a second part by the time I turn 30. And I hope we get that. I mean, that's 5 years. They have a 5-year window, and I hope they do it because I need it.
I would be shocked if they don't give us. I mean, listen, they need to capitalize on the goodwill that they have right now, in the sense of like the box office is, as I mentioned early on, the box office is doing better pandemic wise anyway than I guess Warner Brothers had hoped, because now we're looking at the possible 40 million opening, which may not be a lot when looking at pre-pandemic, but that's still really good, looking at the fact that it was both day in date or day and date. I can't remember. Day and date. That's just weird. Try to say that 3 times fast. But day and date, including the fact that we are still in a pandemic. So that is still impressive. And the fact that IMAX screenings were like 1 point something million for Thursday showings, that is impressive in and of itself. And you're right, Roman. That does show the fact that was people wanted to see it on the theater. And I think there was a large contingency of people that actually saw it on the theater and wanted to see it on the theater for those technical achievements and those technical merits alone. Because as you said, there is so much we could get into tangent and talking about from that side alone, not even talking about the story. Because there's something I want to talk about too. But Dan, what are your thoughts about Dune and how it ultimately came to life on the screen for the second time?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. This whole influx of Warner Brothers, AT&T, Discovery thing is going to put this sequel of Dune Part 2 on hold, because they're not going to be putting any movies into production until they settle this and get Discovery ends up with the ownership of Warner Brothers. They already have some things in production, like the Batman and the Flash and Black Adam and things like that. But they're not going to do any more movies until this merger has completed. And then you got to worry about, is Discovery gonna want to do Part 2? I'm hoping this box office keeps rolling, as Mark Ellis says, keeps chugging along. we need this thing to make as much money as it possibly, because it wasn't cheap to make. First of all, this thing was not cheap.
It's cheaper than Black Widow, surprisingly,
and Jungle Cruise,
which surprises me to no end.
You see the production, the cost in the production of this movie. The cast alone is unbelievable. It can't be cheap to get all these phenomenal actors in this cast. Just to make the ships and the worlds and the things like that look real, where they look tangible when you're watching them on your big 70-inch 4K television or your IMAX or your Dolby or whatever. It looks real. It looks tangible, like you can touch Arrakis and Giddy Prime and all these different places that are depicted in this movie. So I'm crossing my fingers we get part 2, and I'm hoping people just keep going to see this movie as much as possible. The other thing is when you're dealing with a great science fiction novel of the past, something that is so beloved, and David Lynch was hamstrung with the 84 version. They didn't have the technology they have today, and it looked like it was wonky. It looked like it was not that good. But what he had to work with, I thought he did the best he can. But there's some really bad CGI in that film that kind of really throws you off if you watch it. There's nothing bad about this version of Dune. I think I had Blade Runner 2049 at my number 4 of the year when it came out. But when I watched that movie, and it just looked so good. All the various Las Vegas, San Diego, all the different places all had a distinct look about them, and that's the same thing with this film. Yeah. Dune looks different than Giddy Prime, and where Paul Atreides' family and his father Leto Caladan, where they're from, that looks different than Giddy Prime and Dune, and they all look distinctly different, but they all stand up. I knew this guy could handle Dune. When you hear the words Denis Villeneuve's doing Dune, you're like, oh my God. I mean, because I thought it was one of the most gorgeous movies I had ever seen, Blade Runner 2049. I didn't think we could get a movie, and I had seen Prisoners with the different cinematographer. I had seen Arrival with the different cinematographer. We've seen Sicario we've seen him do movies that look distinctly different, but they all still look gorgeous. Yeah. She's like, oh boy, this is going to be epic in scale. It's going to be amazing, because he took a little bit from Arrival, a little bit from Blade Runner 2049, and he put what he learned in those films into Dune, and it really shows. And I'm telling you right now, if Dune doesn't get 6 or 7 below the line Academy Award nominations, I'd be shocked. I mean, cinematography, set production, costumes, makeup, score, I don't know what else. I mean, sound. So
many more, honestly.
I mean, it's going to get a bunch. And I think you have to reward Denis Villeneuve and the movie itself for that by giving it Best Picture. As of right now, it's my number 1 movie of the year. And I think Denis Villeneuve, for the achievement that he does with this movie, he definitely should be in that 5. But don't get me on my tangent about more than 5 directors and actors and all that. We don't want to hear that again.
We got that. I remember we got that tangent. I remember twice before. You have that strong opinion.
We don't want to get into my tangent about all that. But this is definitely one of the best. I'll be honest. I cannot imagine 10 other better films than this that are going to come out the rest of the year. We're going to see some good movies. There's no doubt about it. You're going to see one tonight, Manning, and I'm going to see a couple, hopefully some great movies in the next couple of weeks. I can't fathom a world where there are 10 better movies than Dune that come out the rest of this year. I just can't. This is an absolute masterpiece, and I wrote my review on it a couple days ago, so you can read that too.
Yeah, no, Dune and Mass for me are like vying for that number 1, 2 spot at the moment, and it all depends on the day. If I'm like looking for a, that really visceral, emotional gut punch that is Mass, or the technical marvel with a classic coming of age story for Dune. It all depends on the day, truthfully. But you mentioned something prior, Dan, in your spiel about Dune, and how Denny was taking bits and pieces from everything that he's learned. Because when I was watching, Vanity Fair has their scene breakdowns, and he was there with the break down the Gom Jabbar. I can't remember precisely.
I think it's a Gom Jabbar.
Jabbar. Okay.
There's so much verbiage in this movie that
I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
It's dense, but not in a bad way. It's dense because I've never been so invested in a world since I don't know when, because they will spoon feed you I know that, Roman, you have issues with the Marvel films. That's for people who know him. That's something that he knows. But
it's kind of a trait at this point. It just comes with the name.
Yeah. But for those, they spoon feed you a lot of these things. And granted, Dune will try to make some things digestible and have their exposition. You can't get away of it. You can't get around exposition. Sometimes that is needed. But the way that it's done feels interesting and fascinating. And I just want to know more. I want to know more about this world. I have this desire, the way they cut back and forth, as you said, from these different worlds and makes them so distinct. Like what is the planet for the Hurricanes?
Getty Prime.
Getty Prime. Yeah.
Getty Prime. See, I don't know all the names, but I want to know, because it seems to me it's a nice blue tint. It's very cold.
Miserable.
In comparison to something
place, right?
Yeah.
It's like, ugh.
That's the place the villain should come from, shouldn't it?
Exactly. And then you converse that with Arrakis, and it's very orange, yellow. And if you feel dry whenever you're there, Greg Fraser's brilliant cinematography really makes that stand out. Yes, Dan, what were you going to say?
Let's quote. I don't know, one of the Star Wars movies. Sand, it's coarse. It gets everywhere.
It gets everywhere.
Well, I don't know which one of them. One of the prequels, I think.
That's the second one. Famously, I don't like sand. Or in this case, I love the sand in Dune.
Yeah. But I remember that was in my head. It's like, oh, that quote is like, sand. It gets everywhere. It's coarse. It
does.
And then they have a great line said by Josh Brolin about sand and how you're taking a shower in it.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. Go ahead, Roman.
No, yeah, there's that line. I think there was a meme that came out about some of the iconic lines about fears of mind killer and stuff like that. And then it was like, oh, the most iconic line from the book. And it's like something about wiping your ass with sand or something. And it's just a nice, funny joke in the movie. And there's not many jokes, but that one worked for me.
No, yeah, there aren't many jokes there too. Denis Villeneuve is not someone who there's not a lot of humor in his movies, but it doesn't mean it's humorless. There's always just the right little tinges of humor here and there, be it situational or, as we said, that joke. And I think that works incredibly well because it gives some levity to what is a very dour, not to its detriment, but it's very dour, very serious. But it's interesting the entire time. The world, the relationship dynamics, I felt genuinely invested in some of these characters, be it even like the relationship specifically between Lady Jessica and Paul, his mother and son, I thought was fascinating, as well as also Duke Leto and Paul, his father and the son relationship accordingly. Like the great line of you will always be everything you needed to be, my son. First off, what a great, healthy father-son relationship right there, ladies and gentlemen. But it's fascinating because I want to know more. Like now I almost want to read the books because I feel like there was some stuff cut about that dynamic. I wanted more from their dynamic. I wanted more. My detriment, I guess, to the film was I wanted more, which I guess is a great negative to have because I never looked at my watch. I never was like, wait, I looked at it once because I'm like, wait, how much is left in this? Because it just flew by so fast. The pacing is great. No scene outstays its welcome. It lets the characters breathe, but it also makes the characters interesting. The actors are phenomenal. The technical achievement in of itself, as I mentioned, Greg Fraser filmed this beautifully. It's very, in comparison to some of his other work, like Blade Runner 2049, it's very desaturated. Like there's not a lot of bright, vibrant colors as people will look back on Blade Runner 2049. There are a lot of vibrant colors in that one. This one, not so much, but that doesn't mean desaturation does not always equal bad. Yeah. In this one, the camera movement, the close-ups, the use of shadows, and the use of lighting is,
scale.
What was that?
The scale. To
The
me,
scale.
the scale is just like you see these ships coming, landing. You see these ships in space.
It's great.
You see these attack scenes or whatever. It's like the scale. They really have figured out the scale of how to do the CGI based on the location that they're on.
Yeah. And what I was going to add, like, as I said, it's desaturated, but it's not flat. There is depth to the perception. There's the blacks are black, the whites are white. It shows that there is some great high level of contrast. Some of the scenes were kind of enveloped in darkness the entire time, and there's intention with the lighting. And I love good lighting in movies. And Greg Fraser did a fantastic job. But Roman, a question I have for you is, when you saw this come to life, you had mentioned specifically Hans Zimmer, and you said you were going to go on a tangent about that and Hans Zimmer and his great work that he did. For you in particular, what were some of the highlights when watching this film? Was from a technical standpoint, at least, or from a story standpoint, just in general, what are some of the things that you take away from other than the general film in and of itself?
Well, one of the things in the movie that, gets a little bit more attention in the book, like a lot of other stuff gets more attention in the book, like some subplots that they don't really include in the movie, just because it doesn't really necessarily make much sense, but it's always nice to kind of have it for world building. But the voice is this key part of the story or essential power, where it's kind of like an overwhelming sort of skill to have and to kind of, dictate maybe something happening in a good way for you, or to force someone to do something they might not want to do, just this, that, and the other. And so what I loved about what he did with the score is, during like these big moments of like Paul coming into power or growth, is you would have the choir belt into the score. And it just was sort of like this overwhelming, alarming moment, because for how mechanical everything is and for how artificial a lot of it is, whether it's the ships or the sets or whatever, I mean, the ornithopters, it doesn't even matter. It's kind of offset by this natural sound of the human voice. And so when Hans was talking about that and saying like, I wanted to include that because it, you do have this desolate planet, you do have this world that doesn't really have much life in it, but the sound of like this voice is an extension of these characters. Or even as I noted in my review, like you look at the ornithopters, when they fly, they look like insects, they look like dragonflies. And so the desert is brimming with life, but in this mechanical way, whether it's a beetle in the hallway that gets foreshadowed, a couple of times before a big moment, or these characters that are touching these very tangible sets, and the story is about a lot of the abstract, a lot about the unknown. So these characters are venturing into the unknown. They have no idea what's going to happen next, but they've got these very tangible, real things around them that kind of ground them in the moment and allow them to sort of, forge their path. I mean, there's so many moments I can just look back on in the movie and say, I cannot believe they did that and shot it the way they did. And the most notable one for me, and I noted it in my review, is the moment between Paul and his dad. Paul goes from a kid asking a ton of questions and eager to ask questions, to learn more, to know more, because he's concerned, into a prepared adult ready to like give orders. And so when he's talking to his dad, asking about, what's the future of House Atreides? What's the future of us amongst a graveyard of their fallen forefathers from the past? It's like, I can't believe they did that and managed to make it so visually interesting. And they just use everything as an extension of the themes and the story of the movie. And I can't think of a movie this big with this much money put into it that goes as far to make it that personal for these characters. And that's why it really stands out to me in every single regard.
Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned about the sound. There was an interview, I forgot who it was with. I read the article. Hans Zimmer says he wanted to create something from, quote, another world, another time. And that's exactly what the soundtrack is, because it feels ancient, like this is some almost a otherworldly archaeological thing we've discovered in the depths of like the Sahara or something, but also something that is alien in a way. They're all humans, of course, besides sandworms. They're not human. That'd be weird. But it feels alien and foreign in a way when it comes to the use of mechanical and very kind of like ethereal sounds. Like he took some of the aspects that he's done of Blade Runner 2049 in like kind of the synthesizers that were used, but also he married that with some like the choir from like a Gladiator almost. So it's like he decided, let's combine these two together to create something that is both ancient but otherworldly. And he does an amazing job. Like I was listening to the soundtrack running yesterday, and I'm just like, this is just
that's all I've been listening to. Like Armada and I forget what the other one is. That just I think it's like Holy War that are just out of this world good. And I think for Denis Villeneuve as well, this movie is kind of feels like everything in Denis' career and Hans's career has led to sort of this movie, because it feels like such a great marriage of so many things they've done throughout their career. I mean, if you look at what Dune's about on so many different, like in so many different ways, whether it's, you know, the interplanetary conflict or, you know, the abstract a la Arrival, you know, you see a lot of these subsections in Denis' work, and he's quoted before as saying like that Dune is like the biggest thing in the world to him as much as it was Blade Runner. And that's why, you know, I understand the comparisons to Lord of the Rings, to Star Wars, to Game of Thrones, but to me, it's more like Blade Runner in the sense that the world is speaking for itself. It's something that we're really just investing in and letting just it envelop us and just kind of going on this ride of something we've never seen before. It looks familiar in some ways and feels familiar, but that's because it's a marriage of medieval fantasy, swords and shield. There's no guns, there's no FaceTime, there's no iPads, and it has all this science fiction future stuff of the future that we're kind of familiar with. And that's why, to me, Dune is like, having read it, having seen it, you know, David Lynch's version and half of this version, it's like, yeah, this is something special, and it's been special since 1965. So, yeah. And
I think it's really cool, as you mentioned, like there are swords and sandals. They're literally fighting with like swords and spears, but they also have like shields. They also have like these electronic shields. So it's this dichotomy between these from science and almost just classic swords and sandals. It's, as you said, it's like Blade Runner, where there's these analogs. It's very much like, this is not like a let's turn on the hologram. I mean, there are kind of holograms, projectors, but it's not super futuristic, which we have interplanetary travel, so there is some futuristic, but it doesn't feel overwhelming. As I said, it feels grounded in the fact that it's taking place then and there, with kind of almost past. It's almost in the past as well too. It's like, you know, the galaxy far, far away. A long time ago, this is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's what it seems like.
And one of the things I noticed sitting in the theater is usually in science fiction movies, they don't refer to anyone as human. But Paul, when talking to his mom, says they don't breathe like or act like normal humans. And it kind of stood out to me because I was like, this takes place like somewhere in the galaxy, and he refers to humans, even though they don't refer to them. It's interesting. So I found that kind of interesting.
Bowls, we get bowls, palm trees. So it's kind of interesting that there are like stuff from our own planet in this story. You know, that was kind of fascinating. But something I want to ask you guys, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong or whatever. This story to me is more prevalent and relatable today because of what we're going through as far as a society. But I look at like the spices like oil today, and I look at like these families as like political like countries and stuff like that. And this
vying for the oil.
Yeah, vying for the oil. And I look at this story as something that we can relate to as a society. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important. And a lot of our film and our music and our TV shows, it has to be relatable, something that we could tangibly think about. That, oh yeah, that reminds me of this, that, or the other, you know? And that's what Dune has always reminded me about. So I wanted to get you guys' opinion on it. Do you guys agree with, as far as like the spices, the oil, and then the various countries or the various houses and stuff like that, or the political, maybe Republicans and Democrats. I don't know.
I completely agree. As soon as you said that, I just immediately went to my review because I noted exactly that. Because what's so great about science fiction, I'm just going to quote it here from my review, is all great science fiction is based on a semblance of truth in the present to expel warnings about the future. And I think that it's kind of incredible because the book released in 1965, but you can literally relate it to the U.S.'s invasion of the Middle East in the early 2000s and how they went to the Middle East, essentially like defied their beliefs and systems and used technology to take over. And I think that's kind of fascinating because oil is so precious of a material that you can use it to kind of control like so much capital. I mean, it's all based around oil and how prominent and dominant it is around the country. I mean, just almost as much as water is. And I think that is so fascinating, and all great science fiction does it. So I completely agree that it is a story about Middle Eastern people and their land being taken over and having their beliefs and systems denied by the U.S. government. But the fact that House Atreides comes in and they're like, we didn't come here to rule the Fremen people. We came here to embrace their culture and their desert power and how they sort of use their environment to their advantage. You see that early on. And again, that is also an extension of why this story is so good. And you guys have no idea, unless Dan, what's coming in the second half, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I mean,
it's going to be incredible.
We know we're going to get epicness in the second part. If you know the story and if you've seen the first where it's going to be epic, and that is going to be amazing when we finally get that. I hope, I mean, come on, Discovery. You got to do this. If anything, you're gonna greenlit anything, Discovery, you got to greenlit part 2 of this.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm more than confident. I'd bet money that we're getting a part 2. I cannot guarantee we're going to get anything more than a part 2. I would love it. I can't guarantee that. It all really depends. But to your question, Dan, to me, that just kind of shows that time is a flat circle. Where we are literally going back and forth, because this was the 60s, and now here we are relaying to something that can still translate to today, that still holds weight and still holds meaning to today, that you can still use and see, okay, that was then, but this is also now. And Roman, that is a fantastic actually line. I'm going to steal that in the future because it's to show what's going on there, to provide warning for the future. Not verbatim, but yeah. And I think that the allegories are universal. A lot of complaints that I've heard from this is that like, oh, we've seen this before. Well, of course you've seen this story before. This is kind of an adaptation for something that kind of paved the way for a lot of not
everything
like
else we've seen.
Yeah, like not something like Lord of the Rings, but like when it comes to the hero's journey from a lens of both like fantastical sci-fi, fantasy sci-fi, what have you, other than I said Lord of the Rings and some other stuff here and there. So when it comes to Star Wars, and many other just films, like the adaptation, what's taken from Dune, is still so universal and great. My one critique, I will say, is that, and I didn't call it a critique because this will go away. This will go away if there's a part 2 and I get to see it. Is that this does feel very much like a part 1? They literally end on a movie or a line that says, "This is only the beginning," and it's like, oh, I see what you're doing there. I know what you mean. This is only the beginning. It does feel incomplete. The movie does feel incomplete. Not that there's missing scenes or that it doesn't feel whole in the moment, but it does feel like there is an overarching story that is incomplete. And I do really want to finish that because his arc is only just beginning. I can feel that arc only beginning. His journey, his path to the desert, I know that, as I said, but I want more because his arc has not been completed. And this will work so much better as a part 1 to a part 2. And if we get that part 2 and I see that, my 4.5 was what I have it right now will automatically jump to a 5, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I just want to be able to finish his arc and his story. And while this is a complete story in and of itself, there is a larger overarching story that is happening on Arrakis and in the world in and of itself that needs to be told and needs to be completed. So when we get that part 2, that 4.5 will be a 5. I can automatically tell you that to be the case. But did that, for either of you guys, I'll ask the question, did that incompleteness deter you guys at all? Or were you just like, nope, it's in and of itself? Or is that something that y'all were maybe not forgiving of, or maybe you were forgiving of it, or did you not find it to be something that was incomplete? So Dan, what about for you? And then Roman.
Yeah, I knew what I was getting into going into it. I knew it was a part one. I knew it was going to have a finite ending, and then we're going to go into part two whenever the budget, whatever he could get part two. I really wish Warner Brothers let him just film both parts together, so we would get part two next year or whatever. But we didn't get that. Yeah, but I knew I was going into. I knew it was going to end in a place that it was going to make sense for it to end in that place, and hopefully, just Discovery just green lights part two, and we get the finish. My thing is, I don't think it's going to be as long as this one, though. If they do a part two, maybe $1.50, 90 minutes.
That's what I'm thinking.
Wow,
I think so too.
Then you get that 4K Blu-ray, and you get them combined. The Ultimate Edition, where you get them.
I'd watch it,
and you get to watch it all in one sitting, and it's like this is just one big movie. Remember, Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2? Like we got those separate, but really, Malcolm always talks about the Ultimate Edition or whatever it was called of Kill Bill, where you just sit there and you watch them both together because it's really one big movie, and that's kind of what Dune will be, quote. Hopefully when we get part two.
Well, I will preface quickly by saying that I'm curious as to see how this plays out when it comes to a 3-act structure if we try to combine the two, because there are 3 distinct acts in this, and I'm not saying like the story in itself is incomplete from what they've told here, but I feel like there is more, especially when it comes to character arcs and the overarching story, that feels incomplete, if that makes any sense whatsoever, because there is a complete narrative that is told here, if that makes any sense.
Well, there's a romance, and that we don't get the romance. There's like
they hinted at it.
A romance in dream sequences that we never get. So that is kind of what I think a lot of people are looking forward to, and obviously the big battle type sequence that we're going to get.
There will be.
So we're going to have to get this romance that we kind of foreshadow in dreams, and then the giant big battle to show the leader from a boy to a man and a leader and the whole 9 yards. So, I mean, maybe about 90 minutes, you could do that. I don't know, maybe longer. I don't know, who knows?
I'm okay with longer, but Roman, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say, because for me, going into it, I was like, well, where is it going to end? I don't want it to end. I know I'm not going to want it to end because as the scene got towards the end, I was like, is it going to be here? Are they going to give us this before they do that? And then once they have that big sequence towards the end with the 2 characters, I was like, okay, they're wrapping it up. And I can kind of feel it too, just sitting in the chair. I'd been like, man, we've been here for a minute. But no, as far as, the sequel goes and the incompleteness, and I totally get it. But based on my perspective of it, is the whole first half of this story, and even the book does this really well, is it alludes to a lot of things, and it's just a lot of foreshadowing and building on foreshadowing. And so for the movie to sort of visualize that, where there's a lot of foreshadowing of things that may come true, may not come true, and how he perceives that in his reality and what it could end up being, I think that what the movie does really well is it embraces that. It embraces that's a part of the narrative, that it is foreshadowing what's to come. And yeah, it kind of cheats a little bit and saying, well, come back for part 2 when it's going to be maybe another 1.5 to 2 hours of story and ending in a big battle and this really awesome sequence that I can't wait for people to see, and all this other stuff. But yeah, I think that they really kind of capitalize on foreshadowing. So to me, that when it ends, didn't feel as cheated, because again, it is the first 3 acts of a certainly much longer than 3-act story. And they kind of capitalize on foreshadowing. And I think that that's all it really needed to do for me, because again, I kind of knew where it was leading. So I kind of had a little jump on it. And maybe if I hadn't read the book, I'd feel differently. And it seems to be where most people are standing, where they're like, if you read the book, you're going to be satisfied because it adapted everything pretty much to a T. But if you hadn't, you're going to kind of feel a little let down in that regard, but nothing dramatic to the point where you're like, oh, this is the worst movie I've ever seen.
Oh, you hit the nail upon the head. I was thinking, because you guys know what's coming next. I have utterly no idea what is going to transpire in this part 2. But I'm excited to be able to witness this, because it's not the worst movie of all time. And there's people who may think that is the case. No.
Well, I will tell you something, man. There's a scene when there's a worm coming after Paul and his mother, and the worm stops.
Wait, before we get into that, I want to officially say I think it's time now. We'll get into spoilers. So it's time for us to do that. So now, Dan, hit us with that.
Well, the worm stops. You're going to get more of that. You're going to get more of the things that his mother was teaching him and how he uses what he learned. And you got them, in David Lynch version, it's Muad'Dib. Now, in this version, they're calling it something else. Now,
Lisan al-Gaib.
Yeah.
I've been saying that like every day since it came out. It's such
something else in this version.
I love the way they say it.
David Lynch version. So I was a little confused there, but I understood because I just said, okay, that's what they're calling him. They're calling him that and that and this and this. So I was like, okay, this is what they're calling this. This is going to be a big part of the part 2. You only saw that one scene of that giant worm and it stopped. You're like, whoa, why is that big worm stopping? How did it stop? What made it stop? And that's going to be a huge part going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And why Paul Atreides is who he is. They really do a nice job with various dialogues with the Witches Guild, the Bene Gesserit. They kind of talk about it.
Terrifying.
And stuff like that. And it's like, oh, okay, they're going to, but you're not going to get it. You knew you weren't going to get it. So they really do satiate your appetite for the second part because there are things that really need to come full circle based on what you saw in this version.
Oh, great setup. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. When it ended, I had to explain to Joanne and my brother Roger that this wasn't part 1 of the first full book. This is only part 1 of the first half of the book. And they were like, are you serious? This is only the first half? You mean to tell me there's like a whole, I said, yeah. And you have no idea. And I'm curious as to how they're going to cast 2 characters we didn't see any part of in this movie that plays a massive role in the second one. I already have some thoughts in mind as to who they could be. And I hope they do it because I think that would just be very, very cool.
We haven't got the Emperor. We haven't got the Emperor or some of that stuff at the beginning of David Lynch version. I was
talking about this last night with some people. I was like, yeah, we didn't see any of the Emperor. We didn't even hear his voice. So I'm already pitching the idea, and I haven't done this in years, which is kind of exciting because when you're younger, you're like, oh, who's this going to be? He's like, I want Joaquin Phoenix to be the Emperor so bad because he's Timothy Chalamet's idol, and I think Joaquin Phoenix fits this world perfectly because. I was talking about this with Joanne. Timothy Chalamet does such a great job in this movie because to me, he doesn't look like a typical leading boy or leading man because his features, they're sharp, but they're not, to me, what Hollywood has perceived as ideal. And I think that he fits this world perfectly in the same way that Joaquin Phoenix does, where Joaquin Phoenix is a leading man and he can be, but he's got the scar on his lip. He's got the rough eyebrows, the not so soft eyes. And I think that he would fit this world perfectly. And plus Chalamet is kind of like idolized his entire career after that. And you see that. And the most impressive part of the movie to me, outside of the visual effects, outside of the score, outside of all the fundamental elements, is Timothy Chalamet. You see his growth as a character. You see like he's sort of boyish and charmish early on. And then he grows towards the end when that big fight sequence with, I forget what the exact terminology is. There's so much of it in the movie, but when he pulls the sword up to his head, like he's very serious. He's very grown, matured. And I think that you see that, especially in the tent sequence, which also might be the best scene in the movie. Mad props to pretty much everyone involved, but
that tent sequence is pretty intense with him and his mom in there. But yeah, the stuff with Josh Brolin and stuff at the beginning, boom, that comes into effect in that fight to show who he is and why he could be the man that could protect his mother and vice versa. She's protecting him in ways, and that's why that works so well, Roman. You're absolutely right. This is 3 acts of a 6-act movie. Those 3 acts work for this part 1. They work. They fit. They're there. They make sense for that part 1. Just like Kill Bill, the parts that we saw the bride go through and the things that she went through in part 1, and then we got the conclusion at the end. So I'm beating a dead horse, I guess. Come on, Discovery.
Well, what I was gonna say is that I think this is, well, first off, Timothée Chalamet just proves again. When I first saw him, I can't remember when I first saw him. Was it
Lady Bird?
No, Interstellar. I think it was Interstellar.
Oh yeah, he's in Interstellar for like 8 seconds.
Who is this kid? And then it's like, okay, then he got a chance. And now I'm looking at him and I'm like, this kid is going places. Like he grabs your attention this entire film, and he's already went places. The guy's an Oscar nominated actor. So, but you know what I mean? He manages to just command your attention the entire time. And the performances all across the board are incredible. They're nothing that's going to be like, I don't think, if we're getting into the Oscar specifics, I don't think none of these are going to get nominated for any acting.
Unfortunately,
Oscars.
I think Rebecca Ferguson is. I think she steals the entire movie. Pretty close to.
As I said, that scene where it's like a cathartic scene of having them in that tent, as you said, that was very like, it was building to that scene because their relationship, I'm so curious as to that dynamic, because at the end of the day, Lady Jessica is a part of the Bene Gesserit. It's been a Gesserit. Thank you. These are words I'm going to have to get into my vocabulary really soon, because it's basically almost a whole nother language, it feels like. But the Bene Gesserits are also Can I just say they are? Charlotte Rampling, for the little bit she's on, is terrifying.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like a horror film. It was shot like a horror film, is what that was the entire time. The use of the sound effects, the look and the feel, the acting in there.
The mesh over the face. Yeah.
The hiding of her.
Those witches, man, they're
terrifying.
Yeah.
But that conflict between her growing up of like, okay, these are my people that have been in Jesuits because that's who I am, but I'm also a mother. And when Duke Leto asks her, I'm not asking his mother, I'm asking the Bene Gesserit. I'm asking her. And that was a great scene, and she can't respond right there. And it's like, ooh, this is going to be some conflict, and I love it. I love the character growth that we're getting with these, and they feel like complete characters. I'm really sad. Again, this is spoilers because we mentioned it. Man, why did Oscar Isaac have to die? I love Oscar Isaac as Duke Leto. He has such a commanding presence. I know it's in the story, but he has such a commanding presence. And I'm sad he didn't take out the Baron, because I'm just like, but I know it's gonna play later. I know into
the Baron's gonna get
future story. Oh, I know he will. I know he's gonna die a horrible death, perhaps. But also, Stellan Skarsgård is also terrifying as the Baron. The makeup work and the design on that character,
yeah,
it's bone chilling. Truthfully, like the way that he hovers. I don't know if that was in the David Lynch's visualization of Dune.
But it's like more silly.
Yeah. It's campy looking. The movie just has a more campy look to it, the David Lynch version,
which makes sense for Lynch. But
but they just didn't imagine. Like, okay, there's a documentary out, Manning, called Jodorowsky's Dune.
Yes, I've heard of it.
You need to see this You want to see what Dune could have been? Watch Jodorowsky's Dune, and the same people that worked on like Alien and Aliens, like the design and the that kind of stuff, were working on Dune.
Wow.
Think about that. The designs you've seen for Alien and Aliens and all that stuff, those people that draw up that stuff and create that stuff, they were working on Dune for Jodorowsky, and it just never transpired. That documentary will open your eyes about what a potential Dune could have been like back then. But we never got it, so what are you going to do? But I want to say something about Timothée Chalamet. I wrote an article a couple of years ago, and I know there's a lot of people were like, "Ooh, that's saying too much. That's kind of putting too much pressure on him." But I wrote an article about Timothée Chalamet and Lucas Hedges being this generation's Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. And I strongly believe it, that if you look at these two actors and their arc as young actors and coming up, they're the Al Pacino and Robert De Niro of this generation. You can see how these two young actors are progressing. The projects they're choosing, they're not choosing just, this crappy movie, I'm in this crap. I'm in that crappy movie. No, they're in good movies. They always give great performances in everything they're doing. They're in iconic movies like Dune and things like that. You know, you're going to have a parallel of these two actors as the years go on, because they're going to be around a while. Lucas Hedges and Timothée Chalamet. And I really strongly believe Timothée Chalamet is going to be one of the great actors of his generation when it's all said. 20 years down the line, people are going to oh my God, this is the Al Pacino of this generation, just like I believe Lucas Hedges is the De Niro of this generation. But that's just on a side note about.
I will add that. Oh, well, actually, one performance that I wanted to, mention is also Timothée Chalamet has a great natural charisma, but it's also kind of reserved at the same time. He's not exactly a Jason Momoa, who also has great natural charisma.
We didn't even mention him. We haven't even mentioned him once. He's so good.
Which is like he is so good. He doesn't.
I did like him.
He doesn't exactly go like, "Wow, what an amazing performance," but he has such a commanding like presence when it comes to just like, man, this guy is just someone I cared about. And I'm like, please don't die. Please don't die. I really like you. Duncan, Idaho. What a name. Like, you guys heard Hannah Montana? Well, this is Duncan, Idaho.
And he trimmed his beard. He trimmed his beard. And he said the only person that could make him trim his beard was Denis Villeneuve. He would never have cut his beard off if it wasn't for Denis Villeneuve.
It works because it makes something, because obviously he's known for Aquaman and for Khal Drogo. Both characters have a long beard, and he looks very different without his beard.
He does,
and
yeah.
He manages to create a character that, while it's not a fully formed in the sense of like, wow, what's his backstory? How long has he been here? But we care about him the entire time. And I just want to hear, Jason Momoa has such a great screen presence, and I want to be able to. I loved his interactions with Timothée and Chalamet. They sold that relationship very well. With the limited time they were there together, and again, I felt it when it was a very rousing moment on his death. It was like, I know what's happening, I know it's transpiring, and I feel horrible the fact that he is dying right now. But it went out in a blaze of glory, and I was like, R.I.P. Duncan, Idaho, man. Jason Momoa did fantastic.
I think Denis does a really good job of understanding what his actors are capable of and giving them just enough to work on that. Like, even look at Dave Bautista in Blade Runner 2049. He's in the first scene and he's so good. He's like one of the best performances in like the last 5 years in that scene, I feel like. Just how the way he carries himself, just the little glasses on a big body and stuff like that. And I think every interview I've watched of Denis, and he's my favorite filmmaker. I have nothing but passion for the guy, and he's just done so much for me just as a storyteller and what his movies mean to me and all that stuff. But he just really understands just how to get the most out of what's available to him, whether it's budget, whether it's actors, whether it's talent involved behind the scenes. He just really gets it. And I think that every time you listen to him talk, it's just like, man, this guy, he's not like a Martin Scorsese where he's, excited and pumped up even at 80 years old. He's very specific, but he's still very much in love with what he's creating. And some people think that's kind of a con to his work. Some people think that Dune may be a little too clinical and his filmography may be too clinical. But to me, Dune is clinical. It's a very specific movie about very, very specific things that span very different genres and can be combined into one. And that's why it's such a bizarre sort of sci-fi fantasy trip that only Denis could have made.
It's the new Star Wars, but it needed to be in the hands of somebody that can make it the new Star Wars. And I strongly agree with the comparisons. Is this the new Star Wars? Yeah, it is the new Star Wars. In Denis Villeneuve's hands. It wasn't the new Star Wars in David Lynch's hands, but it is the new Star Wars in Denis Villeneuve's hands.
I hope that's the case, because he's a very distinctive filmmaker. And a lot of criticism I've heard from him is his movies feel cold and emotionless.
Completely disagree.
And I was about to say, the emotions in his movies are there. It's controlled. It is something that is not overtly like nothing. And again, every director is distinct. Every screenwriter is distinct. It's all different. For him, he controls the emotion when it's presented. If it feels distant, it's because might be a choice at that moment. It's not saying you can't do that. Look at, again, that tent scene. That was building up to that moment, and it is released, and it's cathartic. He is not an emotionless director. He is a distinct director, but he's not someone that wears his heart upon his sleeve, where everyone is like, in a very specific way. You can see them. The characters are very controlled, but they will let go of that control, and you can see their emotions. They are not emotionless caricatures. But I heard that too much, and it's like kind of annoys me because it's very false.
Even just with watching Sicario recently, that sequence at the end when Alejandro Benicio del Toro's character has the gun pointed at Emily Blunt's character, it's the only time we see like physical tears in the movie, and the whole movie's building up to this moment that feels never ending. Look at Blade Runner 2049. Like Agent K, he's kind of concerned about where he's going and what his journey is. And then at the end, he isn't the child, but he chose to die for the right cause. And he's like, oh, all the best memories are hers. And then he dies on the steps. And it's like all these moments, they're full of emotion and they have meaning at the end. And I think not enough movies do that, to where, a lot of dramas have the characters reaching into the sand and lifting their fists in the sky, crying and angry and upset and throwing things across the room. But he manages to do it to complement the narrative that it's a part of. And I think that is just a huge testament to his ability as a storyteller, because he's patient. He's very, very patient. And I think that he capitalizes on that every time.
And if you look back at some of his like films, like you look at Prisoners, like there's always there's always a cathartic moment of the characters release their anger or release their high emotions. Like Blade Runner 2049, Kay finally just kind of like throws a chair. He gets upset in that one moment. And again, that was him releasing. Prisoners, Jake Gyllenhaal's character of Detective Loki, he has a moment where he starts banging everything, and it's cathartic in that one moment. It's not exactly, it doesn't transpire throughout the entire movie. There aren't these peaks and valleys. It is a slow build before there's a cathartic drop off, and you continue that. Yep. He knows when to use emotion very effectively.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just heard that complaint a lot, and I think it's misplaced, because if people are looking for a very particular type of emotion, and not saying either thing is good or bad, I just think when they say he has no emotion, they're not looking hard enough.
I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah. So because again, he is one of my favorite directors, and I think he's a fantastic auteur when it comes to, because look at his filmography. Again, I haven't seen, even if you just take what did he do before Prisoners? Or is
Enemy, Incendies, Polytechnique.
Okay, well, let's not do Polytechnique because I haven't seen Polytechnique. Oof. But like, I know that's one of that I have not seen.
It's hard to watch.
If you look at is it? Oh, well,
extremely hard to watch.
Well, if we look from Incendies all the way to like now, if you look from that list of, you have Incendies. I'm just going to see off the top of my head. Incendies. You have Enemy. You have Prisoners. You have Sicario, you have Arrival, you have Blade Runner 2049, you have Dune. That is it is fantastic. But there is nothing else to say other than this is just an amazing run. And I can't wait to see what he does this. Part 2 for Dune, please. Next movie, please. Warner Brothers Discovery.
He can't make another film in between these two.
No.
Discovery has got to greenlight Part 2.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think they will.
The next thing he does. But also, a lot of people here, a lot of moving parts, getting everybody on the same page. They're all doing people. Momoa is doing Aquaman, and everybody's
Rebecca
doing
Ferguson, Mission Impossible, all this other stuff.
Yeah, so getting all these people together again, cinematographers, the DPs, the costume people, it ain't gonna be. That's why I wish Warner Brothers would have just let him
back to back. They should have
back to back. Get it done with, but whatever.
Hey, Hans Zimmer is on board for number 2. We have him down. He's already writing music.
I mean, he's only won one Oscar, Hans Zimmer. I mean, how is this guy only won one Oscar in his career?
It's so weird.
We got to give him but there's
John Williams is out there stealing them.
Well, no,
stealing the nominations at least.
The slots, those guys kind of come along in the last decade or two. But we got this guy who's gonna legitimately get Johnny Greenwood could get 2 nominations this year, and Zimmer might lose again. And it's like, really? Zimmer will lose to this?
Which is a perfect time to actually, before we get into the Oscar talk right now and wrap things up, I want to clarify something, because at the very end, they do a great job of kind of building Zendaya's character up the entire time. And then we kind of finally get their interaction, and it's kind of, they're just kind of knowing each other, but there's something budding. You can kind of see and tell. But one thing I found incredibly interesting is that they use these flashbacks, and I want to clarify from y'all, because of course you guys have actually seen both the David Lynch, and for you, Roman, you've actually read it. There is a character that is shown that says, "I'm going to teach you the ways, or ways of the desert," and you come to find out that's the person he's fighting. Am I incorrect? Is that the same guy that he has in the vision? And then instead of him showing the ways of the desert, he kills him. Correct me if I'm wrong, and if this is spoiler, stop me right now. Does this mean that his visions will not always come to pass, that they are ever-changing, ebbing and flowing? Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely, because
Okay.
even though he's having dreams, doesn't mean they're... And the Bene Gesserit witch lady kind of said this to him. Don't... Just because you're dreaming doesn't mean it's going to real. And then also he got that line from... Duncan Idaho, hey, dreams are dreams. This is reality. You know, you live in your reality. This is the, you know, so we have to take it with a grain of salt that those dreams may not come true. But I think the stuff that's going to happen with Zendaya is going to happen. It looks like they're going to get together and they're going to be like the leader of the world, the galaxy, or whatever the hell.
But will she?
Muad'Dib, or whatever the hell you want to call the guy.
But will she murder him? Because that was also in the vision as well. So that's what I'm curious about, to show, are his dreams or his visions or dreams or what have you, will they all come to pass? I don't know. But Roman, what were you going to say?
He gave him the knife.
I think it's kind of hard to say, because with any adaptation, they could change things. Yeah. Which always kind of scares me, but from the looks of it, it sounds like he's going to stick pretty close, because he has a very deep passion for the material. I think what the dreams do and these visions do is they're full of anxiety and full of fear. And I think that because he's growing into a man and it is a coming of age story in a sense, I think that is just him kind of growing into having to accept being a leader and the fear of what comes with that. I mean, think about what happened to his dad. You know, his dad dies because you have a character that they trusted set him up for failure, which makes it a lot like Game of Thrones, because Dr. Yue, he's not a bad guy. He just wanted to try and do the right thing and end it all. And maybe that was his means of doing it. And I think that just plays into a lot of what you're going to end up seeing in the second one, where you're going to have a lot of things alluded to, a lot of things come to pass. But it's just kind of a matter of not so much what the dreams are telling him, but what he acts on in the moment. I mean, look at that fight sequence towards the end. He didn't want to kill the guy. He could have killed him multiple times, and he chose not to. And they said, you have to do it. And then again, there's a great quote. I'm not even going to try and quote it because I'll botch it, about, you know, kind of growing into a man and once you killed someone. And I think that's, again, I just want to literally just go read and rewatch the movie over and over, because that's all I want to be in right now, is that world. It's special to me. It's very special.
It's a fascinating world, and we didn't get to talk about how the sandworms, which I thought were like an incredibly cool visual and are terrifying in and of themselves. But we're gonna get more in part 2, right, guys?
Yeah. Oh, very much worm.
Yeah,
big worm time. Big worm energy.
You're gonna learn how to ride the sandworms in part 2. We're gonna get to learn how to ride the sandworm. You saw the what was it? The doctor was riding the sandworm.
Yeah,
actually gonna learn.
No. She's dead, right? I did not expect them to kill her. I thought she was going to last longer.
What was she riding the sandworm for, though?
That wasn't her, was it?
Yeah, that was her, was it? Right?
I don't think so.
I
don't think so. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens. I don't know how they're going to start the second one or who they're going to start with, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens that you're like, okay, yeah, I got to kind of recollect myself. So hopefully they have a double bill of the two when part 2 comes out, because I'm pretty positive that's happening.
The question I have is that where did they end in the novel, Roman? Where did they end? Is this near the halfway point in the novel, or is
I think actually the halfway point is when Jessica and Paul meet the Fremen, and then I kind of see the ending as a little bit more of like an epilogue, as a sort of a vestibule, I guess, of just connecting part 1 and part halves of the story, because that's the way I at least kind of read it. If I went and looked at the book, it's literally like page, what would halfway point, 390 out of 700 or something. It's sort of in a weird spot.
Okay, well, they did a nice job with Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, in my opinion.
Oh, that was like to a T. That was like halfway.
They really did.
Yeah, that
They
was
did
page
a
for
nice
page
job
almost.
on that, and it needed to be 2 parts because of the epicness of that book. So they kind of split this. That's what I'm saying. I don't think part 2 is going to be that long. I mean,
Yeah.
unless they really kind of explore some of
Bloat
the
it, yeah.
characters a little bit more. I'm thinking
with
like a
that.
90-minute movie for the second part, but who knows?
I'm gonna
Yeah.
call it now. I think it's gonna be 2 hours, almost to the T. That's what I'm. Because they're gonna have maybe set up.
There's so much, and there's 2 characters they haven't introduced yet, and I think Denis wants to do a trilogy with Dune Messiah. I think he wants to. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're only going to allow him to do Dune 1 and Dune 2. And then that'll kind of be it. But yeah, I'm thinking about an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours because based on the material, and even Denis said this. He's like, we've got all the talking done. We've set up everything. Let's go have some fun with the camera. And I think that it's going to be damn fun.
Yeah. I saw that and I'm excited. And I can't wait to see exactly the Emperor was someone I kept thinking they talk about. And I'm excited to see him make an appearance because, Joaquin Phoenix will be really interesting because you have Gladiator where he played Commodus. So it's going to be like on a nice callback maybe to that. I don't know. Regardless. So I mentioned before, Dan, you said that Johnny Greenwood might steal the Oscar from Hans Zimmer. I think that this is one of the not most assured, knock on wood. I think this could be the year Hans Zimmer takes his second Oscar, his much deserved second Oscar for this year in particular, because that score has been everyone talking. And if it's going to rake in some of the below the lines, I see that happening. But at this point, with how well that it's also doing at the box office in comparison for the pandemic that we're currently in right now and the day-to-day, as well as the fact that it's getting fantastic reviews and as well as capturing a cultural zeitgeist at the moment, I foresee this transpiring to like maybe, this could easily get pictures, director, adapted screenplay, depending on, what some of their other competition is.
I'm thinking about that. Yeah.
Depending on the competition that lies behind it, you have cinematography, production design, costuming, score, sound, visual effects, cinematography. Did I say that? Did I say cinematography
Twice.
already?
Twice.
Okay. Then
be nominated
film
twice.
editing.
Production, editing, yeah.
So that is 10. I can see it in a day where it gets 10 nominations, truthfully.
And it legitimately deserves 10 nominations. Of course, any acting nominations would be like a icing on top of the cake.
Icing on the top of the cake, exactly.
Yeah.
Which I don't see it getting in because there's so many great leading performances this year. But supporting, male and female supporting, is kind of,
it has not shaped up yet, basically.
The mass people, you're talking about the mass people, the coda people, there's probably 2 or 3 slots right there in supporting, right? So then you got to say, okay, you got 4 spots left for the rest of the movies. Maybe somebody from Power of the Dog, a couple people from Power of the Dog.
Going supporting.
Going support, like Kirsten Dunst, Jesse Plemons, Cody Smith McPhee in Power of the Dog. I mean, there's also, you got to remember, you got Being the Ricardos, you got.
Oh, yeah.
Forgot.
So you don't know Javier Bardem could sneak in from Being the Ricardos and not Dune, but I'll tell you what, we never mentioned him. I like what we did with him, and I want to see more of him in the second one. So yes. I can't wait to see more of his character in the second one as well. But 10 is a number that I strongly agree with, Manning, that this film not only deserves 10 nominations, it's almost assured that could get 10. Any more than 10 is this wow. It's on the scale of what All About Eve, It Happened One Night, Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, some of these big movies that really got a lot of nominations. What, Titanic got a bunch of nominations. Mm-hmm. So,
because don't forget, it would probably get 11 if we didn't combine sound. So.
Yeah, two sound. That stuff at the beginning, the
dreams are messages from the deep. Dreams are messages from the deep. That
was like, damn, what is it? That's some interesting stuff, But it's definitely I'd be shocked if it didn't get 10. But hey, this, who knows? Flea could get 4. That would be amazing. We're not talking about Flea, but
no,
shot that Flea could get 4. That would be shocking.
So Roman, I had mentioned before when I was reaching out, like we were going to talk about the awards prospects for Dune, and Denis Villeneuve with Arrival is he is familiar with this entire world, so of the Oscars and awards chatter, even for BAFTA. He got a director nomination for Blade Runner 2049, which is still one of the coolest BAFTA nominations that I remember seeing. But for you personally, how do you see this playing out with the critical acclaim that it is still currently getting?
It's kind of interesting because I'm not as in tune with the awards this year as I have in the last couple, just because I work more now. I work almost 200 to 250 hours a month. And it's one of those things where I only watched 40 movies this year, 40 new movies, and I'm usually at about 90 right now. I'm usually at about 95 to 100. And, that's not bad. I mean, there's people out there watching 200, but, it's
good for them.
Yeah, very good for them. And I'm very jealous that you have the time to do that. But when it comes to awards, I think that we're going to start reaching a point now where Denis has about 10 to 11 films under his belt. I mean, you look at some of the greats, Spielberg, Scorsese, all these directors that have been nominated a lot and in consideration every single year. I think Denis is reaching that point. I mean, you just look at Sicario, and it kind of all started there where, oh my God, this guy's just making movies that are perfect for award shows. You've got cinematography nominations. You've got screenwriting nominations for Taylor Sheridan. You've got this, that, and the other. And it's just one of those things where with this one, this might be sort of the big one for him that kind of pushes him into being in talks every single year, just because, like you guys have mentioned, I can easily see 10. Will it get any acting nominations? Probably not. It's not the type of movie. It's not really an acting vehicle. Everyone's great, but it's more of a showcase vehicle for all the special effects. And I think the script is great too. I think the editing is off the charts good and probably the only reason the movie works. I would love to see that there. As for directing, I think look at what Christopher Nolan did with Dunkirk, and I think Denis Villeneuve should get a nomination for that reason alone, just because of what he had to do, what he had to bend over backwards for. And I think you can just see the passion, just the way he's talked about it, the way he's fought for it, the way he said that you shouldn't push this movie to streaming at day one just because, you think it makes more sense there. This movie should be seen in the theater. The Oscars value the theater going experience. They love that stuff. They love celebrating movies. And Dune, if you really want to go that far, is kind of a celebration of what movies are capable of, on top of the fact that it has a smaller budget than a lot of these big movies that won't get a quarter of the nominations this will. So I think this is just kind of set up for success and set up for preparing Denis for a decade where he might be in consideration for best director every single year or whenever he makes a movie. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not as in tune right now, so I can't really compare to, Power of the Dog or French Dispatch or a lot of other movies that I'm really excited to see and want to see. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. I guess I'm pretty excited because I think it deserves every dollar, every set of eyes in the world, and every nomination in the book.
Which I was going to quickly just add for, if you look at Gold Derby right now, I had it on latest odds. Here we go. Come on, work for me. But if you look right now, just for Dune is currently still, for odds, is number 5. When it comes to getting Best Picture. So that is still incredibly good. If you look at director, that's picture again. See, the app is different than the website, so I'm not as in tune when it comes to that. But if you look at actor, Denis is currently number 2 when it comes to possibility of getting nominated, right below Jane Campion. So I think that is...
What did she do? Okay, yeah, I need to see that. Okay. I need to see that.
Netflix December.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm excited for that. So there is a strong push to get him, because every year there usually is a technical film that manages to make it in upon, the merit of its technical prowess. Trying to recall, what was it last year? What was last year again? I can't remember. There wasn't one last year, actually. There wasn't a big
blur. Nomadland a technical achievement. Which, in a way, it is, but
I mean, in a way, it's different, though.
Yeah.
But there are. There wasn't really. That was like one of the few exceptions, but there usually is a technical marvel of a film that gets nominated. It never usually wins,
We've had like
unless you count.
Mad Max Fury Road. We've had Black Panther. We've had
Yes.
In years past, obviously the Lord of the Rings.
Avatar.
Yep, good point.
Mhm.
Yep. So
we
do get those technical marvels,
Yeah.
and epic type story type things once in a while. Yeah,
They'll like be like, "Hey, here's your nomination." Dunkirk, I think, as you said, Roman is equivalent to that as well too. But looking back, I think this is very close to Lord of the Rings in the sense of like, here's all these texts. None of the actors are going to get it, but look out for SAG Ensemble. I can see this getting a SAG Ensemble nomination.
Yeah,
just from
100%.
like, which it would be very deserving, I think, because everyone brings their A game, even in like the little bits that they're in it.
Is there another cast this year outside of French Dispatch, which always has like the biggest cast of the year, or whenever Wes Anderson movies come out? Is there another one that really kind of competes on this? Like,
it's not going to be biggest cast, but it's like Mass has got 4 people that
Mass has gotten great.
Give a phenomenal performances. Coda has got a very nice ensemble of people in that work well together. That is a nice little ensemble. Look Up, or what's it?
Don't Look Up.
Don't Look Up is going to have a crazy cast.
That's the McKay movie, right?
It's about the meteor.
It's like my arch nemesis right now. I can't stand that guy.
I remember you.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so that's got a crazy cast. Don't Look Up does. What else is there out there? I mean, it's a nice ensemble. Power of the Dog with about 5 people, but
the big one, the Power of the Dog. You unless House of Gucci, that could be one that really comes in. We don't know. Nightmare Alley, that's another. That's another one. Del Toro. Belfast, that's another one.
Yeah.
But when it comes to just size, like Dune is the biggest. I think is the biggest one when it comes to just the sheer size of the of the performance of the cast. They do great work, and I don't think Dune would win if they got SAG Ensemble nomination, but the fact that to me this is when the nomination of SAG Ensemble itself would be deserving.
Well, they do like to give SAG Ensemble to a cast if there's a bunch of people on the cast that haven't got a SAG, and they're like, oh, Jason Momoa, he don't have one. Dave Bautista, he don't have one. Rebecca Ferguson, she don't have one. Josh Brolin's got one. We know that because of No Country for Old Men. But a lot of the people, Stellan Skarsgård, he probably don't have one. They love giving it to a cast like that. If like the majority of the cast don't have a SAG, then they could say, oh, Stellan Skarsgård won a SAG for blah, blah, blah. Josh Brolin won 2 SAGs, da-da-da. So they do like doing that if it's a cast that has a bunch of people and majority of them haven't won.
Because looking now,
which
last year,
big name stars.
Last year was Trial of the Chicago 7. Year before that was Parasite. Year before that, Black Panther. Year before that, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Year before that, Hidden Figures. Year before that, Spotlight. Year before that, Birdman.
Look at the cast on some of those movies. A lot of people that maybe hadn't had won a SAG, but now, like Trial of the Chicago 7, look at that cast.
That was a big cast. I think it was the biggest cast.
Big cast. So they love giving it sometimes to the biggest cast. And if Dune is, if French Dispatch drops off, I predict Dune getting in there and maybe pulling that out. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to win Best Picture.
I feel like that movie's getting buried right now because people are seeing it, and I was like, that came out like I can go to I can drive like 45 minutes to go see it, but I had no idea. And then there's no showings anywhere near me anytime soon, and it's like I feel like that movie's getting buried, and that's Fox, right?
Searchlight, yep.
Searchlight, and that's getting buried by Disney because they have them now, right?
Yeah, technically. But Searchlight's got what else do they got? They got
something else, don't they?
Yeah, and I think they're gonna push something. There's something else that they're pushing, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on it, but I can't think
I need to check.
I can't think of what it is right now, but
I'm kind of shocked it's just getting buried because I want to see it. I haven't seen a Wes Anderson movie. Oh no, I saw Isle of the Dogs on the big screen.
It's coming out of Cannes, and it didn't do that great coming out of Cannes. And that's when people started talking, well, it's not as good as people think. It's Wes Anderson if you're a Wes Anderson fan, but it's not as good. So they started talking about other things. So that's the reason why you're not getting a lot of. And it's an artsy fartsy kind of art house movie, so it might not be playing in a lot of big name theaters.
Oh, Nightmare Alley. Nightmare Alley.
That's it.
Okay.
I knew there was something. I just couldn't put my finger on it. Yeah, they're gonna push Nightmare Alley. Fox Searchlight is.
Or The Eyes of Tammy Faye. They got that for actress. So.
Oh yeah, that's definitely. It's not, and I don't mean Fox Searchlight. I mean Searchlight Pictures.
Yeah, they changed it. I forgot about that.
You can't put Fox in any of these.
Sad.
No, we can't. Yeah, they can't. It's just 20th Century Studios. Still so weird.
Yeah.
Oh dear, Monopoly. That was a game that we played, right? Now it's just reality. Yeah, that's kind of like what we expect at this point. I think 10, I think we're all in kind of agreement. I think 10 would be the case because like the Lord of the Rings, there is a great fantastical ensemble that do great work and that there's no singular individual unless like Ian McKellen, but that was Gandalf. And I think that was just like not a fluke, but a one-time thing.
Yeah.
I would be again, I think if it's anyone, I think we're all in agreement. Rebecca Ferguson. I agree.
I think Rebecca Ferguson would probably be the only one.
Yeah. And supporting if she goes supporting actress, because again, that it's kind of not it's not weak, but it hasn't formed. It's still very much up in the air about what in the world's going on with supporting actress. So she could, if they like the movie enough, but I don't see that happening. But I see Hans Zimmer really pulling through personally, just because they know they love the guy and they want to give it something besides maybe like a sound, because that's also some fantastic sound. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Johnny Greenwood would have to have two incredible scores to knock out Hans Zimmer.
Agreed.
We've seen it happen before with, Desplat had 2 1 year.
But I don't think that will transpire because most namely because it's hot. I just feel like there is a resounding like love for like, we want to get you a second Oscar Hans Zimmer because he is just one of the hardest workers in all of the, Hollywood at the moment when it comes to, just composers.
Yeah. I mean, look what he did with Interstellar and Dunkirk. I mean, 2 scores that I think probably like some of the best ever. And yeah, I think with Dune too, I think it's just gonna be one of those like, hey, it's been a while. I think you've earned this. Now, obviously, if Johnny Greenwood comes in, who is extremely underrated and very, very good. Yeah, I just think it's kind of Hans Zimmer's year. And outside of all the big technical stuff that it'll probably win, I think it should nab score as a for sure victory and then set him up for major success in part 2.
Well, I'll tell you something too. I know this is like being a kind of a contrarian here, but think about if Dune had come out last year. Be honest. Okay, be honest, guys. Is Dune the far and away front runner, wins everything last year? Be honest. I mean, obviously score, it beats Nomadland score. Hans Zimmer wins there. Visual effects, cinematography, probably knocks out Nomadland and cinematography, set production. I'm telling you guys, was this a mistake?
No.
Or keeping it right there on December 25th?
No, because theaters were closed. There was no way for them to be able to view it. And with the pandemic we were in,
HBO Max.
I still don't think. I
played it at home. As soon as I got home, I was like, oh man, I just kind of want to just turn it on just to kind of like.
I watched it at home.
It's great, and I have a nice setup, a 50-inch 4K TV with a nice, sound bar, and I have a nice setup. I got nothing glaring. It's perfect, but it's not the same. It is 100% not the same. I was sitting in that theater, and I said, this is the way it was meant to be seen, and I can feel it. And I think if they released it last year and, with HBO Max, I just don't think it would have done the same. I just really think that having that impact of sitting, whether you're in the center or far up or close to the screen, being just completely towered over by this behemoth of a movie, it just doesn't work the same. So I don't think we would have got, like a sweep or anything.
I just think it cleans up last year. That's just my opinion. But
see,
Manning.
I think, well, because again, you have something like Mank, which was only almost exclusively on Netflix last year.
Yep.
I don't, Roman,
not a Mank fan. Sorry.
Tell us how you feel. Poor Fincher. Because I know you love Fincher too.
Oh yeah,
So,
just
interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think this would clean up merely because I think the hype has been building for so long. All the factors are coming together right now for it to hit perfectly. There's some we want you to succeed. The theaters are back. There's a narrative forming around it. I think it would have got some technical achievements. I don't think it would have taken any of the top prizes. I don't think Dune's going to take the top prizes.
We only got 8
I could be wrong.
year, Manny. We only got 8.
That's true.
Think about that, man. We only got 8 last year. We had 2 more spots.
Although that's only if we get who's the person before the current guy? Dave Rubin?
I get 5% of the vote.
It's possible. It's just I think all the factors are coming in right now, right when they need to be, and with that they're coming in. But I don't think it would have gotten shut out. No way. I think no matter when this would have come out, I think that although Denis Villeneuve was adamant, we're not releasing this unless I can get it in theaters, and he would not have gotten it in theaters last year, truthfully, because again, they released Tenet in theaters, and then the second wave hit, and then well, that's the last movie we're going to see in theaters again for a while.
And seeing that in theaters was awesome because it was me, myself, and I. It was nobody else.
No one else. Oh wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great.
That was a fun experience.
Dolby. I saw it in Dolby, and I was like, "Damn, this movie's good." That soundtrack was just hit you over the head. Of Tenet, But, all right, that's fine. That's an honest. You guys gave your honest opinion about that. I just figured that question had to be kind of asked in a way.
That's fair. Yeah.
It's a strong point. Yeah.
And Hollywood loves a good narrative. And kind of like Manning said, it's kind of the narrative is building right now where Denis is sort of falling into Scorsese's territory about certain opinions about the theater going experience. And people are talking about him positively, negatively, and everything's sort of just building to this big event. And the fact that it's probably going to hit 40 million, it seems like at this point. And then once we get the HBO Max numbers, usually around midweek towards the end of the week, I think we're going to see something surprising and overwhelming. And everyone's going to be like, yeah, this was a real deal. And I think people are going to want to go back and bring their friends and be like, oh, you love Star Wars? This is like that kind of, but weird. Let's go see it. And then they're going to see it and they're going to love it. So.
And I think that's going to I'm calling it now by this time next week, because this comes up on Tuesdays. I believe that we are going to, by this time next week, so that by next Tuesday, not this coming Tuesday, but next Tuesday, when this following Tuesday, you know what I mean? We're going to have an announcement about the sequel. I truly believe that. They're going to be hey, because Denny's been talking there's going to be one, and I don't think they're going to back out on him from doing that. I think they're going to be hey, we want to do this. And I think they're going to be happy enough to be hey, we want a second one. We'll see how the second one goes before we announce it. We're going to do another one. But I think we're going to get that sooner than you think, guys.
Yeah, and Warner Brothers, for their history.
Real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Legendary, okay.
Legendary, yes.
Re-upped and made a new deal. And they're not with Warner Brothers anymore. They're with Universal. So, in Nolan's a legendary guy. Villeneuve's a legendary guy, I believe. Who else is in that legendary group? There's six or 7 major big-time directors are in that group. I can't remember all of them. But
I can't remember.
Or is it just properties? Does legendary acquire properties and they pick directors to direct the properties? Or I thought they had contracts with big Villeneuve. I
don't think they have contracts with the studios. Well, Nolan does. Nolan did. Or maybe it wasn't a contract. Maybe it was more hey, we work well together. I want to keep working with you. But I don't know if it's a contractual, because I know not every director has contracts with studios. I think it depends on how big of a director you are.
I think Legendary is a production company that specifically had contracts with Villeneuve, Nolan, a couple other big names, and all their movies came out under the Legendary banner, which then was distributed by Warner Brothers. Now, though, it's going to be Universal. So could Universal pick up the sequel to Dune with Villeneuve attached, since they are attached with Legendary now? That's the kind of interesting. Is Warner Brothers out of the picture?
Right now I'm trying to figure. I'm looking this up at the moment as we speak.
Yeah, so I think Legendary was formed with 4 or 5 or 6 major big time Nolan, Villeneuve, a couple others, if I'm not mistaken. I completely wrong.
Well, from what it looks like right now, what they have in development from Legendary Pictures, they are they have like certain films. Like some of those distributors are Netflix, some of them are Warner Brothers, some of them are Universal. Some of it is well, actually, it just looks like Universal, Focus Features, Warner Brothers, and Netflix. The four of those are the only ones that I see so far that look like they've worked with in the past, and they seem to work with different ones. Obviously, Warner Brothers, it looks like, has been their main one they've worked with, but they've worked with Universal in the past before. It seems like.
Have they? Okay. I always thought they were under contract with distribution with Warner Brothers until now, with this whole pissing contest with Nolan and them and Denis Villeneuve and them and WB, that they moved to Universal. But
no, they have done with Universal. They've done Dracula Untold with Universal. They've done Seventh Son with Universal.
Oof.
They did Black Hat with Universal.
It's not bad.
And they did Steve Jobs with Universal. They've done Crimson Peak. They've done Straight Outta Compton. So they've done some stuff with Universal in the past for Legendary. So I think they're mostly with Warner Brothers, but they've done some stuff with Universal, it looks like. But that's, again, this is Wikipedia, so they could be wrong. We don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, we're going to wrap up right now because I was going to do an hour 30. This turned into 2 hours. So, of course, it always goes over.
Always goes over when I'm involved. Trust me.
It always goes over.
Every single podcast I'm on, it always goes over.
Hey, that is okay. I'm glad we had the time with you, Roman. But before we go out, Dan, first off, where can the people find you?
You can find me at disappointmentmedia.com, where I'm a film critic in the Orlando, Florida area. Also, my name, Dan Skip Allen, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. I do some YouTube shows. They're on hiatus right now. We'll be back in the spring, probably early next year. Just reviewing movies. I got a big one this week. I can't wait. I can't say anything about it. I got Monday. Monday cannot get here soon enough.
Oh, I'm excited to hear what that is. And then, Roman, where can they find you?
You can find me at RBC Roman on Twitter. That's ARB as in boy, ISIROMAN, as well as my blog, Showtime with Roman movie blog. You can find my review for Dune there in detail, and it's pretty good. Sometimes I read some stuff back to myself. I'm like, man, I did not go to college for this, and I turned out pretty all right. As well as my essay that I wrote about Denis Villeneuve. It's something I've been wanting to do for a very long time. I did a video essay on Christopher Nolan before. I did a essay on Damien Chazelle before and his 3 big movies. And then now I've kind of concluded that with Denis, and it's kind of been leading up to this. And I am very, very, very proud of what I managed to do in just putting it together within a couple days, and just kind of expelling my love for a filmmaker that's just done a lot for me over the years, and how I can't wait to see what he does next every single time. If someone land me on an interview with that guy, and I'll pay you lots of money, I'll be very happy. So
I'll pay you for the interview, basically.
Yeah, it's something that I just love doing, and so I'm going to continue working towards that, and hopefully it pays off eventually. But other than that, thanks for having me on. Of course, I love podcasting. I haven't been able to do it as much. I have my own podcast, the Film Drafters podcast with Caleb and Quantas. We do like fantasy style football draft, but with like movie topics. So this week we have our favorite horror movies. Next month we have Oscar movies, Christmas movies. We had what horror movie would you like to see Paddington in? So we just do lots of crazy topics, and it's a lot of fun. And I love doing that with those guys every week. So we're recording tomorrow. So yeah, Film Drafters podcast everywhere you can find podcasts. So that's it.
It's awesome. And again, thank you, Mr. Roman Arbisi, for joining us here today.
Of course.
You can find me on Twitter at Cine_man. That's CINE_MANN, as well as here hosting Gone with the Wind, where you can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Anchor, literally any different place that you can find a podcast. You can listen to Gone with the Wind here. And of course, go check out Roman's article in regards to Borders. Denis Villeneuve is an excellent filmmaker, and he's just making me appreciate the man even more. A great find we have in this man, and I'm so glad he's got to create the films that he's wanted to create. But again, thank you, Roman. And
of course.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next time when we actually we're getting into the Oscar season. Like by next week, we'll slowly get into, well, no, in 2 weeks, I guess. November will be right around the corner, and we will be in the Oscar season, in the hunt. And I'm excited to see what's transpiring. I just want Dune Part 2 right now. So I'm putting that out into the world. Retweet. Yeah, retweet. I want that now. Thank you, and we'll see you all at the movies.